Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Yesterday, we are talking about the preservation of boilers up to potential hazards. Now we are going to discuss about the preservation of boilers when not in use. What are the safety precautions to avoid the potential hazards, what we discussed earlier. The preserve boilers during the extended periods actually ensure complete draining and drying, protect internal surfaces from corrosion, and seal all openings to prevent moisture and air entry. This is the one general statement where we need to take the step by step to taking care of preservation of boilers to keep safe in position. That's what the during the extended periods you want inactivity, we have to ensure make complete draining is very perfect and drying is natural cooling to be taken care of, and then drying and protect internal surfaces from corrosion and see all openings, prevent moisture and air entry. This is the general statement for the safety precautions for the preservation of boilers. But if you go to the detailed, one is draining and drying is very important. Second one is protecting internal surfaces like steam valves, pressures, internal surface of the boiler tubes, furnace tubes, and the economizer tubes and all, including the ID fan, FD fan, and all these things, gate valves, globe valves, steam pressure valves, everything we need to control protecting internal surfaces. And then third one is sealing and storage is important. After sealing all the openings, how can you what is called store the proper not to expose it to the relative humidity for avoid the corrosion and all these things. These are the three steps in what we call safety pressures in detail for the preservation of the boilers. Here, draining and drying is very important. Once you decided to keep the boiler in preservation for a long time due to various reasons of the organization, first of all, we have to slow down the firing and slowly we have to cut out all the fuel sources and see that the once the boiler is shut, draining of internal water slowly, one by one, and drying to be taken place. In this draining and drying step, we have to use the first empty the boiler, thoroughly dry, address non-drainable parts because where the drains are not there, because operator coils are not having any drains or only operator coils, water has to come the primary, secondary, and then only it will drain. That address non-drainable parts also. Consider discount. For example, I told yesterday we have discussed about some chemicals to be after draining out. We have to add some chemicals to protect a layer, phosphorus layer and all. But the corrosion will not be taken place. Yesterday we have discussed that point also for taking care of the what we call the phosphate layer also. Okay. Then coming to this draining and empty the boiler, completely drain all water from the boiler, including superheaters and any condensate systems. Thoroughly you have to empty the boiler first of all. And we have to make it cool also. Then thoroughly dry. That means inside any accumulation of water surfaces, any moisture contents, you have to see that it should be allowable for the natural cooling. And we have to use the FD air fan That means preheat air also to be sent to inside the boilers, so that the any water accumulation is there, it will become a dry also. Through FD fan, air will be sent through preheaters, through primary and secondary and tertiary airs. Air will be supplied to the boiler tubes, so that the inside the water accumulation, anything is there, it becomes dry also. Use a warm or hot air circulation to dry the boiler internally, potentially using compressor air or compressed air to blow out water from the horizontal tubes, because there is a vertical tube boilers is there, no problem. Where the horizontal boiler is there, where the accumulation is taken more, we have to use this step by sending the hot air. We have to use, see that there no water accumulation or stagnation inside the boilers. And we have to we have to take care of the visible and inspection to be done non-drainable parts. Pay special attention to non-drainable soap-operators. That is, soap-operators, we have a coils where the drainable is not there. From soap-operators, then secondary, then primary, then it will go to the primary header. From the primary header, it will be drain the water or steam, water maybe things. Such what is called the drainable parts is there. We have to take care of all the essential steps to take care of to avoid what you call accumulation of steam or water or moisture and all these things. Consider desiccant, because we are see that still it is there in the inside, the moisture is there. We will send the, as we are yesterday trichloria chlorophosphate will be sending along with the desiccants, so that inside a layer will be formed, phosphate layer, to protect from the corrosion and all these things. And second one is protecting internal surfaces is very important. Clean and examine and neutralize acids, because once you send the any desiccants and all these things, the feed water acids are also there. Therefore, that acids will be neutralized by sending the base forms, alkalis, and also consider wet storage. Anything is there, add chemicals to dry up, monitor water quality, because that is pH or pressure water. We will be discussing in detail. Therefore, protecting internal surfaces means clean and examine all tubes, brickwork, refractory work inside the tube to tube. There is a brickwork is there, refractory work is there. We have to see any fittings is there, any breaks is there. That is also to be taken care of. Internal baffles and ash hoppers and fuel bunkers for signs of erosion and the ash deposits also. Where some coal-fired boilers are there, or the oil-fired boilers, or the gas-fired boilers, we have to see that any accumulations is there in the fuel bunkers and all these things. And especially the coal hoppers will be always, the jamming will be taken care of, and the fuel bunkers is also will be stuck up with the coal powder and all these things. We have to see that should be clean, and after the cleaning, we have to what is called use the examination thoroughly and inspection thoroughly, and see that there is no accumulation of any dust. If you accumulate the dust inside the internal parts, internal parts will be inside, the erosion will be taken place and worn out will be taken place. Therefore, the thickness of the boiler tubes will be affected. Thereby, during the running of the boiler, again after resuming the preservation of boilers, the running problem is there. There will be explode is also taken care of. Therefore, we have to see that ash deposits and anything should not be there in the fuel bunkers, all internal parts and all this, if it is coal-fired boilers. Clean and examine all tubes, brickwork, refractory work, internal baffles, ash hoppers, and fuel bunkers for solution and the acid deposits. And second one is if any acids already is there in the deposits in the feed water, after draining also there is some deposits in there in the inside surface of the boiler tubes. If necessary, remove that deposits by sending the alkalis so that the acids deposits will be neutralized. Any residual is there, it becomes with alkaline water and all these things. That's why, if necessary, remove deposits and neutralize any residual acid with alkaline water, efficient alkaline water inside the tube. Therefore, any residuals of the acids will be there. It is also become a neutral and it will be drained and then it is dried after the become drained completed. Then consider the wet storage is also important. If wet storage is chosen, ensure water quality is maintained because you want to what is called dry layout and the wet layout as discussed earlier yesterday. If you want what is called wet layout taken place for the boiler, if wet storage is chosen, ensure water quality is maintained and that the boiler is filled with treated water and prevent corrosion also. Because all the tubes filled with the, first of all, drain and again fresh water will be, boiler water will be filled with all the tubes so that it will become a wet storage we called as. Earlier, yesterday we are discussing about dry layout as well as the wet layout also. With the wet layout, we have to see that water quality should be filled up with the boiler tubes. Add chemicals also important with that water so that the inside stagnated water will not be posed to the inside the tubes, become influenced by the corrosion and all. That's why you add chemicals also. Add chemicals like trisodium phosphate or oxygen scavengers like hydrogen to the boiler water to create a protective layer and prevent corrosion. That's today we have discussed about this. Phosphate layer protection will be arranged by sending the trisodium phosphate or oxygen scavengers. Therefore, the inside some layer will be, some thickness of the layer will be formed inside the tube. Therefore, the corrosion will be avoided because the inside the water is stagnated, water is storage because it is under the wet storage preservation. Therefore, we have to take care of add chemicals to prevent corrosion and all these things. Monitor water quality because of inside water quality is water is there. We have to always the pressure and the level also to be monitored thoroughly when it is wet storage reservation is there. Monitor water quality regularly. Monitor water quality, especially for residual sulfate levels and pH. That means alkalinity. If using wet storage, if the wet storage is there, you have to taken care of the, because the chemicals are using, any residual sulfates levels will be there. pH will be affected. You know the pH is what is called the, after 7 it is alkali, before 7 is acid nature. So that's why I want to explain this here is, in this case, the boiler is always kept under hydraulic pressure of 5 kg per centimeter square pressure. Water quality mentioned for residual sulfite level and pH. So therefore, the pH will not be more until unless it becomes a neutral will be taken care of. That means 7 to be maintained. The pH must be maintained at 10, at least 0 ppm sodium sulfate, because there is no sodium sulfite traces also will not be taken care of because the adding of chemicals. The sodium sulfate is there, definitely pH becomes below 10. That means it becomes a acid nature. That's why pH to be maintained at 10. If you want to pH maintain 10 alkalinity, all the water inside the tubes, boiler tubes with this pressure, and see that at least Zero traces, that means parts per million. Nil parts per million of sodium sulfate stagnation is inside the tubes. That's very crucial point because of adding chemicals. One way is advantage, one way is disadvantage also there. You have to see that there is no traces of residual sodium sulfate inside the boiler to maintain pH at 10 at 0 ppm of sodium sulfate. The method can be adopted for an ideal period of at least 3 months. Preservation is necessary for the duration. Therefore, this is very important point I'm addressing here. Pressure is important, pH is important, and the chemical traces should be there. Not to be pH will be affected because of the any sodium sulfate traces will be there. Sodium sulfate will be cleared by adding up chemicals only. Simple. Therefore, we have to see that this step is very important if you want they consider wet storage and all. And after that, the sealing is important and the storage of the boiler is important because once the sealing of all the openings with a tight nature and there is no question of the allowing outside air into the inside or out inside air is not coming to the outside because FD fan and ID fan is slowly kept running because of to maintain water pressure and 5 kg per centimeter square inside the tube boilers. That's why when the ID fan and FD fan is using, you have to see that all sealing points should be very tight. There should not be any chance to give the a, leakages from the furnace ducts or the dust extraction ducts or the boiler ducts or the furnace body also. Therefore, sealing and storage is important. Close all the openings. Seal drums. That means mud drum and the steam drum should be very much sealed carefully with all the walls. Inspect desiccants because we are adding the some chemicals to dry up the nature and protect external surface also because we are concentrating on the only inside the two boilers by adding the sulfate conditions and all. But outside also we have to see that there is no corrosion will be taken place of the boiler during the preservation. Protect external surface is also very important because we have to see that air in the air, water moisture, that means relative air, relative humidity will not be there in the air. And we are always use the dryers or the what is called the lighting will be more so that the any winter conditions are there, any winter seasons are there, the any moisture will not be taken place outside the two boilers also. It depends upon seasonal. So close all the openings, tightly close all the boiler openings and blank all connections to prevent air and moisture from entering and going also. Outside, from outside, it is not entering inside. Inside, it is not going to outside. That is very, very important. Seal drums. Ensure drums are tightly sealed to prevent air leakages because the mud drum, the boiler level at the steam drum is very important steps to be taken care of. All the flanges, all the walls going to the steam drum and mud drums, pressure valves, temperature valves should be very tightly, not to be any chance to be given for the leakages. That is called, we have to see that seal drums also important, apart from the walls. Because once we cannot have a sealed drums carefully, the leakage will be happen from the steam drum and the mud drum is also a leakage is there. It becomes empty. There we are giving the pressure difference is there and alkali difference is there. That's why the wet storage is affected. That's why you have to see that the drums will be sealed perfectly. Inspect the desiccants because once we adding the chemicals to dry up all these things, any residuals is there, we have to inspect desiccant for replace them if needed to send the pure water or the feed water or the hot water. Any the what is called traces are there inside the boiler tubes. Protect external surface also. As I told, you have to maintain the boiler outside. Relative humidity is very important because the water vapor in the air should be very neatly maintained because of in the winter conditions, winter season, the cold airs will be breezes will be there, and the rainy season also will have what is called the cold air because relative humidity is more in the water vapor. That is why we have to see that outside the parts of the body is also taken much important, like internal parts also. Normally, the people are avoiding the external surfaces, the taking care of that the external surface also to be taken care of much as important as the internal parts because during the running it will becomes a lot of problems will come, not only teething problems during the running after resuming of the reservation, it becomes an explodes also will be taken care of. That's why we have to see that there should not be any unoccurring or uneven things to happen. We have to take the potential and essential steps in the during the preservation of the boilers for the long time, that is 3 to 4 months. Therefore, they consider the fuel connections also, where the oil connections also, burner connections, oil pipes, heating conditions. You have to see that they consider the fuel connections also. Disconnect all oil and gas connection if it is oil and gas burners are there or the oil and gas furnaces is there. The coal-fired boilers as well as steam boilers and hot water boilers is using the oil burners also. So therefore, the any oil lines going to the burners, all will be closed and should not be circulate the oil within the tank also. Because some of the people are what is called within the tank, they're circulating the oil to maintain the temperature. Suppose any valve is leakage in the tube, through the pipelines, it is going inside the boiler also. That's why circulation of the service tank is also stopped. Service tank of the fuel is also getting stopped during the preservation of the boiler. That's why you have to see that disconnect all oil and gas connection to prevent fuel leaks because it's very important step to be taken care of. Apart from this, sealing steering continuation is there. Maintenance, maintenance of temperature, keep boiler room clean, isolate boiler, remove burner fuse, verify CO gas, RSAT analysis also will be seen. RSAT means oxygen analysis. Therefore, maintain temperature means, as I told, the 5 kg per temperatures, pressure is there 5 kg per centimeter square, and pH is 10, and temperature is also depending upon the wet storage, depending upon the outside atmosphere. If using wet storage, ensure the metal's temperature remains above the dew point to prevent freezing. Because if you become what is called cold water is inside the tube for a long time, definitely dew point will be taken care of, and it is freezing will be taken care of. Therefore, the corrosion will be immediately formed. That's why if wet storage is there, if the wet layout is there, you have to use the temperature to be maintained optimally and not to reaching to the dew point to prevent freezing of the water. They keep boiler room clean because the boiler room always we have to monitor by first class attendant all the boiler crew during the preservation of the wet preservation of the boiler because some of the instruments are working in the boiler room. We have to monitor in the local as well as the boiler room also. You have to see that there is a communication between the local operators and the boiler room operators. Therefore, ensure that boiler room will be always clean and housekeeping should be perfect to be maintained. Ensure the boiler room is clean and free unnecessary items to maintain proper air circulation for the burner. Because if to maintain temperature, some burner is also to be maintained inside the boiler to maintain temperature. That's why even the lines are cut. One keeping one oil burner ensure that you have to see that always the stored water having temperature not to reach the dew point and prevent from freezing. Isolate boiler also is very important because the from the steam from the boiler the steam is going to turbine, and the after the fuel consumption there is a ESP is kept running, and the boiler what is called cut running, or green liquor is coming, and liquor what is called fluid is coming. That means we have to isolate the boiler. There is no any other equipments connected to this boiler should be detached. Detached means it should be flanges or closing all the valves if any connection to the turbine, connection to the tanks, connection to the service tanks, connection to the oil tanks, connection to the steam tubes. Like this, if any connection is there, boiler to other equipments like pumps, ID pumps, and the drains also will be see that it should be very carefully uh, isolate the boiler. There is no connection in the ensure boiler is isolated from battery boilers before carrying out maintenance, because the once the somewhat what is called the current is not using, battery will be used. We have to see that there is no question of the any leakage of the current is also there. Therefore, ensure that isolate boiler is very important during the preservation of the uh, boilers. Lot of steps involved in the preservation of the boilers and the what we call this storage of the boilers. Very, very important is there, but normally high production industries, this situation is not come, whereas the small scale industries having these problems because of the having the resources, lack of resources, lack of marketing demand, lack of what is called the marketing issues, or lack of what is called the relationship for the unions and all. The small scale industries having these problems, observations as well as shutdowns and all. Otherwise, the large scale industries not as much of what is called dangerous is there, but small scale industries definitely these problems will be come across. Verify the, sorry, verify inside the tubes inside the boilers how much what is called the oxygen percentage is there by RSAT analysis or SAT analysis is there. Definitely it will give the idea about the how much oxygen is there, free oxygen is there in the inside the tube. We have to see that any unburnt, even after cleaning, any unburnt carbon is there during that heat of temperature of water maintained. There should not be any formation of the carbon monoxide. That is very important steps. Therefore, we have to see that while carrying inspection, such boilers confirm that CO gas is not in the boiler and verify that CO gas valve is completely closed, because once the RSAT analysis is getting conducted, therefore oxygen percentage is more means there is no question of the CO formation is there. When the oxygen percentage inside the boiler is less through the RSAT analysis, definitely there is a formation of the CO gases there. That's why we have to see that CO is not to be generated inside the boiler because it's a poisonous gas. And next one is the steam pressure and pressure gauge is also important. Coming to this, what is called this steam pressure means we have a steam uh, uh, pressure gauges, boiler feed waters, and as well as the condensate pressure gauges. All these things having the pressure gauges, temperature gauges. That's why it's given the steam pressure and pressure gauges. And also temperature gauges, all instruments we can say with related to the boilers to be how best we can taken care of is very important. Out of which steam pressure is very important because that steam is going to the turbine from the boiler to turbine. That's why the HP steam is not having any moisture, any water droplets. If any steam drums is operating uh, unevenly, therefore, along with the steam, some condensate will be entered. Therefore, the turbine will be damaged. That's why very important is turbine is very important than the boiler. That's why steam pressure is very important to maintain the HP steam pressure as well as the boiler pressure, flue gas, condensate, and the air heater pressure and the flue gas pressure also to be maintained with the pressure gauges. Therefore, to maintain steam pressure in boiler operation, you need to monitor and adjust the boiler's firing rate is important. How much the firing rate as per the design, as per the working pressure, you have to use the combustion of the fuel and the firing rate to be maintained depending upon the design as per the manufacturer manual. Controlled steam flow also and perform regular maintenance, including the inspection and safety checks, because the controlled steam flow is very important once it is going HPs to turbine. Turbine is giving the power and the MP steam, LP steam, and the condensate also will be coming from the turbine if it is double extracted boiler. Therefore, you have to see that the flow control of steam flow is very important. That's why the pressure gauge selection, pressure gauge calibrations, and the compressor air, which is running all the instruments through the compressor airs. That's why the compressor air operators are very carefully maintained as per the coordinated with the first class attendant boiler also the compressor operator, because the instrument air is important for the compressor air. That's why the steam pressure, understanding the basics first of all important, wherein that second one is not second one, but understanding the basics important here is what is the boiler firing rate. All the boiler crew should know about all this stuff. Steam flow control, pressure controls, water level, safety devices. Boiler firing rate and air is to burn directly impact the steam pressure, definitely. The amount of fuel, amount of air sending through the what is called primary air, secondary air, tertiary air to burn the fuel, definitely on that basis, the water inside the tube becomes a hot water, the hot water becomes a steam, then steam pressure is maintained through the pressure gauge to be sent to the turbine. That's why the amount of fuel and air used to burn directly impact the steam pressure, because the combustion is very important. The combustion of the fuel of the furnace or the boiler is very important with respect to the steam pressure generation. Increasing the firing rate, that means more fuel and more air, adds more energy, thus increasing the steam pressure. Because within the optimum working pressure, we have to maintain. We want to increase the pressure up to the working pressure. You have to add more fuel, either coal or natural gas or the furnace oil or the oil, the natural gas. It depends upon the boiler. More energy will be formed, thereby pressure, steam pressure is also increases. Ultimately, if you reduce the firing rate or increase the firing rate, it will affect the steam pressure. That's why the firing rate is very optimally we have to maintain with respect to the steam pressure, because steam pressure through the steam drum it is going, it is very important step to maintain the steam pressure. Steam flow control is also important. Controlling the pressure is also important. There is no doubt. SB steam having the temperature